Hey guys, just thought I'd do an impromptu inbox review as I'd promised in my last update. This being the MH47E Chinook by Revell in 1/72. It's I wouldn't say it's a new release, but it's a fairly sort of new-ish release of the Chinook. I think it basically came out around about 2 or 3 months ago. Um, to me, it is a kit of an aircraft I've really wanted to get hold of, because I mean, my first thought was the Italy 148th kit, but to be honest with you, that would be just too big. Um, so I think 1/72 is just about the right size for an aircraft of this bulk. As we all well know, it's our own frontline troop transport, and it's an aircraft that's been flying since I would say mid 60s, to be honest with you, because it was used in effect quite a lot out in Vietnam. And then later on, the RAF were looking for a replacement for the Wessex, and they decided upon the actual Chinook. So the Chinook eventually took over from the Wessex, and is primarily based at RAF Odium, and I think there's a squadron based at Benson. And it's the first sort of twin-rotored aircraft the RAF has had in its inventory since the early 50s, the last one being the Westland Belvedere, which, to be honest with you, was not a great success. And in fact, it was withdrawn from frontline service around about 1966, I think it was, or 67. Funnily enough, they used to have them based at RAF Odium. But as I say, this one mainly was a stalwart throughout the Vietnam War, and also came into more prominence out in other conflicts with the US, and more specifically during the First and Second Gulf Wars, and also when the RAF had initially got them in around about a year later in 1982. One aircraft which was actually flown off the Atlantic conveyor before it was sunk, basically was the workhorse during the course of the Falklands War, and ever since then it's been in the RAF's inventory. Admittedly, it's been upgraded to the E variant, but it's still a stalwart of the RAF, and I've seen one or two flying even from here. I've heard them with that flop, 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 low clatter with the twin rotors. You can't mistake the sound, and it's just an awesome looking machine, to be honest with you. And I love it. I wouldn't mind having the chance of actually flying on one if I ever got the chance, but there you go. Who knows what's around the corner? And they've been specifically being used to actually transport a lot of our nurses across the country during this COVID crisis. So, hats off to them for doing that. And I think it's mainly the unit at RAF Odium that's been doing that as well. Um, They'll be basically transporting nurses and staff to various hospitals throughout the country. So hats off to them. As I say, it's the essential military troop transport for the RAF as well as the United States Army, and Marine Corps. I think the Marine Corps have them as well. As I say, this aircraft, this kit, I think was just released around about 3 or 4 months ago. And as soon as I saw it, I thought I've got to have one. I mean, at the moment, I'm building the Wessex. I know Ian's group build is basically going to finish in a couple of days, so I doubt I'm going to get that done. I'm still on the process of getting the interior done, so yeah, it's an ongoing process. And what with the tracks on my Panzer II, which have nearly taken an eternity, unfortunately, projects are going to be a bit delayed, and there is the word that I might be going possibly back to work soon, so that may well hold it up even more. But in a good way, I'm glad that we've got the prospect of possibly going back to work soon. But we shall see. Things can change every minute. I mean, things look promising as regards the overall crisis now. I'm not going to basically jump the gun and say that we're out of it, because I don't think we are by a long shot. It's going to take time, and God willing there won't be a second spike, so we shall see. Anyway, enough waffling about that. I'm going to get on with the inbox review. First off, as I say, this is in 1/72. It's got 209 parts. Lengthwise it's 27.2 centimeters, and the width is 25.2, and you can do it in the US or RAF version. And the kit number on this, if you're interested, is 03876. Okay, so if you want to freeze frame that, by all means do so. There you go. It's a level 4 kit. Nice lovely box art of a US Army machine there, out on operations, possibly in Afghanistan. I mean, it was a stalwart in Afghanistan as well with the SAS. And in the background you've got a Apache attack helicopter, so yeah, very nice and box art illustration. On the back here you've got the illustration of the assembled kit, which I must admit does look impressive. And then there's a little subsection there with some of the sprues, etc. And then you've got the colour codes all along the bottom there for the paints that you're going to need. I don't know what brand they are, probably more than likely Revell. Their paints aren't bad actually. I've used one or two of them in past builds, so that's off to them. I'll probably be using Tamiya or Mr. Hobby Aqueous. Anyway, it's an open ending box, as is normally the case with Revell kits. And you've got this lovely instruction pamphlet with the assembled kit on the front, which looks impressive. A few little notes here, as it normally is: don't eat it, don't chew it, don't swallow it, etc. And then you've got your colour call outs inside, as you can see there. And obviously in some cases you're going to have to mix the paints, but there again I might do some more reference material as I'm going to get around to building this. And then obviously there's a little bit of an instruction of how to mix the paints, etc. And then you've got your sprue tree on the next page, as you can see here, so you can check all your parts are in there. And also some instructions here: need of spares parts, etc. First off, you've got the internal bay where you've got the cockpit, and you've got the bulkheads which go onto the loading bay floor. The instrument panel goes in along with your rudder pedals, etc. And then at the side here, if you're doing the US Army version, you need to cut some of this off at the bottom here. If not, and then the next process I think is basically putting in a extra window up the front. Oh, hang on, I'm not getting in shot. Is this window at the shot in the front here? You put that in if you're doing a US Army version. And then obviously you've got the alternative of doing whichever window for the US Army or RAF version. So don't forget to check your references for whichever version you're doing on this. It's most essential. And then obviously you've got the slip gun or tank there at the sides, with the avionics bay. And then the side of the fuselage, you put the mounting onto the side there of each fuselage half. And then you've got the internal workings again for whichever version you're doing. If it's a US Army version, it's with the hull. Obviously if it's a Royal Air Force version, similar again, which is a bit confusing. And then again you've got the rotors assemblies here, which I think are mainly the case, or the gear shaft for both ends, which goes in either end of the fuselage, along with the fuselage halves, which are buttoned up along with a loading bay. And then it's the assembly of the engines, which you can see, the Lycoming engines, I think they're Lycomings, etc. And then it's showing you the degree at which the exhaust is going. And then obviously you've got the, I don't know if that's a ECM pod which goes on the back of the tail here for the RAF version. I'll have to do some research on that. Once that's done, you've got the front engine housing and the back of the engine housing to go on, and then you've got the clear canopy part which goes onto the front, which obviously you're going to have to mask up. And then it's indicating on here that the top parts for the US Army version are a different sort of glazed cockpit, as it were. And then you got the other engine which goes on the other side and the other side. Now if you're doing a US Army version, it's showing you where to cut the holes there. If it's a Royal Air Force version, it's totally different. Okay, and then you got the assembly of the rear loading ramp, and then you put that on along with the ramp skids if you're having it down on the ground opened up, or you can have it closed up as well. Okay, and then again checking your references, obviously whichever version you're doing, it indicates on the instruction sheet what you should do. So this is where all the fairings go for the RAF version, and this is where all the fairings go for the US Army version. Okay, now again, if you're doing the US Army version, it's showing you where all the lumps and bumps go. And again, the US Army version, you've got this rail which goes across the top of the actual cargo windows, assembly of the wheels, put the undercarriage on along with the wheels, and I don't know what this is. Some rear housing, I think, at the bottom, I think, or is that where the... not quite sure on that. Again, I'll have to do some reference material and research on it. And again, you've got the assembly of the undercarriage bay, which goes onto the bottom of the gear bay doors, and then you've got the front you've got the front two wheels which go on the front of the fuselage, along with an indicator light. That's the US Army version. Again, with the US Army version, you've got all these lumps and bumps which go on, and interesting. And now for the RAF version, it's completely the reverse. So you've got other sort of grab handles and fairings which go on there. Again, for the RAF version, you've got your rails which go onto the side of the fuselage, etc. Again, different undercarriage by the looks of it, which goes on. So obviously you've got to bear this in mind as well on the front and rear. Again, more fairings go on there for the RAF version, and again, I don't know if that's a front grab hook or whatever, more fairings, and got the pitot tube which goes on. The US Army's got two, whereas the RAF looks as though it's only got one. You've got your Gatling gun for the US Army one. Again, assembly of the Gatling gun there for the US Army one, and where it goes. And then obviously you've got the refueling pod which goes on for the US Army version. Obviously with the RAF version it doesn't. Hang on. Again, you've got the winch which goes on above it, where the Gatling gun is. More fairings go underneath for the US Army version. Again, more. Things is where you're going to have to do your research again. And then you've got the assembly of what I think, I'm not quite sure, may well be part of the winch mechanism. I don't know. Not quite sure on that one. I'll have to check that one out, and that's where it goes. Or is it part of the door assembly mechanism? I don't know. And then the RAF version is where all the pitot tubes and etc. go on that. Okay. Actually, it's got two pitot tubes. This is confusing. 1 minute it's saying it's got one, and then in the next illustration you've got two. Right, I think I'm going to have to do some research on this. So some of these instructions aren't quite clear. So, it is a bit confusing. So, yeah, I think Revell, you're going to have to sort of revise what you're doing on your instructions there. And it would be a case, guys, that you're going to have to do your research. Again, it's the same with the RF version. You've got a refueling pod on there. I don't think I've ever seen a Chinook, an RAF Chinook, with a refueling pod on it. Oh well, I might leave that off. And then again, you've got the winch mechanism, and it's saying it's got a Gatling gun on it. Oh, maybe when it was out in the Gulf, possibly, but not when it's UK based. And again, more fairings go on the top of the actual fuselage roof. And this is where the placement of another Gatling gun goes as well. And then obviously you've got the fitting of the rotor system and gear housing and the actual blade. And I think they're actually moulded to a droop anyway, and again with the rear one. So there you go. Anyway, that's all your kit assembled. Then you've got the colour callouts. First off, you got an MH47E Chinook, 160th Special Operation Aviation Regiment, Night Stalkers, Fort Campbell, Kentucky, USA, 1998, and it's overall, I would assume, dark olive drab. There you go. And then on the back here, you've got the upper and lower portion, which is a good idea. And then you've obviously got the RAF version, which is done in a sort of a greeny colour. Yeah, but this is of a HC Mark III, Royal Air Force 2004. But it doesn't indicate what squadron it is. I could only assume it's 72 Squadron. Offhand, I may be wrong. And again, upper and lower fuselage as well. So there you go. Right, let's have a look at the main cruxes of the kit, the actual kit parts themselves. Now, I have previously opened this box up to have a look at it. It all comes in one bag, by the looks of it. Yep. I'll just take the decals out as well. Right, first off, we've got 1, 2, around about 4 sprues, including the clear parts. So first off, if you have a look, here is the side pod for the fuselage part. Again, there's some nice recessed panel line detail on here. If I can get it to focus, and it's not focusing. I don't know if you guys can see it. Yeah, there you go. And then obviously you've got the mechanism for the side door or the winch. You've got your rails here. In fact, that's part of the winch system there, I think. Yeah, it's part of the actual machine gun mechanism there. That must be assumed as the ECM pod. There's your refueling pod right at the bottom of the sprue there, as you can see. And that's part of the winch mechanism there, I would assume. There you go. Right. And then on here, you've got the main rotors. And again, they are slightly drooped as they're moulded, so that's good. You've got the weight of the actual rotors on there, so that's good. This is part of the engine coolant mechanism, as you can see here. The engine grills, front and back engine housing of the rear engine, winch mechanism, I think. More fairings, gear shafts, and I must admit, the control panel is beautiful. I could easily dry brush that and just put a bit of clear over the actual cockpit dials on that. That would look very effective. And then obviously you've got the gear shaft and the rotor mechanism, which you can see here, which is highly detailed, which will look lovely with a wash. And then there's your tyres, the actual aircraft. I think they're weighted. Yeah, they are weighted, so you've got a good definition of the weight of the aircraft. Then you've got the bulkheads right here, as you can see, and there's a little bit of a control radio column there. So yeah, all told, there's some nice, not bad detail on this. And obviously you've got the bottom of the fuselage there, and that's obviously where the winch would go when they're carrying loads. And again, as you can see, I've already got holes in there, but you've just got to follow the instruction sheet as to where the fairings are going to go on whichever version you're doing. Yeah, not bad actually. That's quite not bad at all. It does look quite simple, so I think if you want to spruce it up a bit, you could put some super detail in it. And again, the actual seats for the cockpit have already got moulded on seat belts. So I don't know whether to keep them on or basically take them off and get some aftermarket actually, which probably would look more effective. But we'll see. And then you've got the fuselage halves. Oh, hang on. Again, some nice panel line detail on there. Gives a good portion of the old chunky Chinook. So that will come up nice with a wash and a bit of weathering on the fair engineering outlet there. And that'll look nice. And even on the internal workings of the actual skid ramp, which you can see here, there's some nice detail on there. So yeah, nicely done. And again on the other side, again you've got a nice crisp clear fuselage with the panel line details exquisite. Engine coverings you got there, and the actual internal cargo bay, which you can see. Again, you've got a nice level of detail on the floor. Don't know if you can make that out under the light. Control panels on there, nicely detailed. Again, nice bit of dry brushing and pop them out. So yeah, pretty impressive. And I wonder what a lot of detail on the internal. Oh no, you got some awful great big sink marks on here. They'll have to be sanded down and filled in. Oof. Especially if you're going to have the actual back ramp open. So that's not so good. There you go, that's the perils of model making. And again on the other side, unfortunately, you've got dirty great big injection moulds on the interior, so they'll have to be cleaned up a bit. That's a shame. There we go, there you go. And then obviously, finally, as regards to sprues, you've got the clear parts here. Shall I take them out of the bag? Yeah, I'm going to take them out of the bag and we'll have a look at them. There we go. I have to say they're lovely and clear, and obviously that's for when you actually mask it all off. That'll be easy to mask, no problems on that score. And then obviously, depending on which version you're using, you've got the respective windows that you can see there. So yeah, not a bad kit, I have to say. Not a bad looking kit. Probably quite an easy build. And then obviously, I'm just going to put all the parts back in the box, in the main bag. But yeah, I must admit, I'm looking forward to building this at some stage. When I'll get around to doing it, I don't know. Maybe it's one for next year, I don't know, we'll see. I'm just going to put all the parts back in the bag. As I said, there's not a great deal to this kit, so it'd be a quick build, unless you want to super detail it, which more than likely I will do. I'll probably have it as though it's on the ramp at RAFodium actually. So yeah, that's in there. And finally, we've got the decals. There you go. Not bad. You've got a few stencils on there, but nothing to a great extent. Again, you've got the option of doing having a decal on the actual control panel. I think I'm just going to go with painting it by hand, to be honest with you, and dry brushing it, etc. So yeah, they don't look too bad actually. And they probably bed down nicely as well. So yeah, that's it really. That is the Chinook CH47E in 1/72 by Revell. If you don't want to spend a great deal on the 1/48 kit, and you haven't got the space, and I would suggest this is absolutely ideal to fit in your cabinet next to a Wessex. In fact, that's probably what I'm going to do, is sit next to a Wessex. So that is basically the Revell, as I say, CH47E Chinook. So yeah, I'd heartily recommend that you go out and get one and get building one. It is a lovely, well, it's an awesome aircraft, I have to say. I mean, the way they throw those things around the sky at the air shows is just awesome. Anyway, guys, that's it for now. Hope you enjoyed the inbox review, and as I say, stay safe, and all being well, things will slowly but surely get back to normal. And in the meantime, keep busy on the bench and keep modelling away, because it's the only thing that's keeping us sane at the moment. So until the next time, get kit crazy, happy modelling, and I will speak to you soon. Cheers.